So today I'm going to be sharing my experience using my first Nokia device in about 20 years. I've got the Nokia G42, a phone released about 5 or 6 months ago. So I'm just going to have a quick look at it and let you know my experience using this phone in case you're considering buying one. It is currently available from Argos at the moment for about 160 quid, reduced from about 200. So is it worth buying? How's my experience been? Let's find out. So the design of the Nokia G42 is about what you'd expect from a phone in this price point. It's pretty uninspiring aside from the colour option, but everything else is about what you'd expect from other budget phones as well. You've got a triple camera system on the back, and then button and port placements are very similar to other smartphones with volume rockers, power button with integrated fingerprint scanner, 3.5mm headphone jack and USB-C ports. It's an all plastic phone, of course, but the back is made of a matte plastic material, so it does hide fingerprints really well, and it does color match the rails of the phone as well. It does also feel relatively lightweight. It is about 193 grams. Not the heaviest phone on the market, of course, but I have used much lighter phones as well. But this hasn't hindered my overall use and handling of the phone. And then of course up front you get a 6.5 inch 720p display with a 90 Hz refresh rate. Now the display itself is actually really nice. Being a 720p display personally for me hasn't really been a major deciding factor when it comes to using this phone. Of course that resolution in 2023 and now of course in 2024 is going to be a deal breaker for some people, but personally for me it's not been an issue at all. Bezels are pretty thick overall around the phone, especially on the chin, but that is expected at this price point. And then you get a dewdrop notch at the top which houses the 8 megapixel f2.0 selfie camera, which photo quality I'll get to a little bit more in a bit. But overall the design of the phone I think is actually quite nice. The only thing that I would prefer personally, and that is the case with a lot of these budget phones, is just slightly slimmer bezels all around, especially on the bottom. But overall, like I said, the display is really nice. It's nice and responsive, and that 90 Hz refresh rate does help make the user experience a lot smoother than what you'd of course find on a 60 Hz display, and it kind of does take away from the bad point of being a 720p display as well. So there's not really a huge amount to complain with regards to the design of the phone. The triple camera system on the back is pretty good as well, but unfortunately there is just one really usable camera on the back. It's a 50 megapixel main camera, but that is backed up by just two 2 megapixel macro and depth cameras, which I don't find myself using much at all. Of course the depth camera does help with depth detection when it comes to your portrait shots, but of course the macro cameras are just so low resolution in most cases that they're just not really that usable. But I will of course again get into photo quality in a bit. And one plus to having the Nokia G42 is the base storage option is 128 gigabytes. There's no 64 gig model with the G42. That is paired with a pretty mediocre 4 gigabytes of base RAM, which is what I have on this model, but you do get a 6 gigabyte of RAM with 128 gig option, or an 8 gigabyte with 256 gigs option as well. That will of course improve your overall performance and multitasking with this phone. But overall, I think that's a pretty good deal. 160 quid for 128 gigs of storage, and it is a 5G phone. It's running the Snapdragon 480 Plus processor, a processor that of course is aging a little bit, but I have found that performance has been absolutely fine for me. It is relatively basic performance, so if you're someone that does a lot of heavy multitasking and heavy gaming, you are going to find plenty of stutters using the 480 Plus. But personally for me and my usage, it's been absolutely fine. Apps open pretty quickly, and yeah, multitasking has been absolutely fine. You can have a few apps open at once. I haven't got anything really to complain about for the performance in my use, but like I said, other people that are more demanding in terms of their everyday use might find a few issues on this phone. But having said that, the 480 Plus is built on a relatively efficient 8nm fabrication, and paired that with a 5000 mAh battery, you can easily get 2 days of battery from this phone if you're a light to moderate user. Heavy users of course would be able to kill this phone in a day, but my personal use, I've managed to get a couple of days from this phone and it's been absolutely fine. Charging speeds are about 18 or 20 watts, something like that. Sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, they're not the fastest charging speeds on the market, of course, but of course most people charge their phones overnight, so it's not the end of the world. So battery life is A+, definitely. 2 days of moderate use is not a problem at all. And as for software on the Nokia G42, it does come with Android 13. Of course, not the newest version of Android now, but it is relatively up to date. And of course, Nokia promises 3 years of security updates, and I think it's a couple of years of system updates. So this should get Android 14, but I'm gonna obviously have to wait and see. And of course, another thing that this phone does boast is its repairability. It does support a quick fix design, which does allow you to fix the phone at home if you have any issues with the battery or you need a back panel or something like that. You can get some spare parts and it does support that. Being able to fix it at home, which is a great thing to have, rather than having to send the phone off, get a spare phone and all that rubbish. You can fix the phone at home if you have a few issues with it. So that's of course something that could sway you towards getting this phone. If you're someone that's a little bit clumsy and tends to break your phone quite often, you have got the option to repair the phone at home. So lastly, let's talk about the cameras on the Nokia G42. Now, like I said before, it's a 50 megapixel main camera backed by those two 2 megapixel macro and depth cameras. Now, of course, most manufacturers on their websites claim that they have ultra clear photos, really nice detail and blah, 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 really great performance. Now, if you give the camera enough lighting, it does produce some really nice photos with some good detail and nice natural colors as well. Of course, with most budget phones, they use really small camera sensors. So as soon as the lighting starts to drop, the photos do deteriorate pretty quickly. It does support a night mode, which does help to bring out a little bit more detail, but I find that it does soften the photos quite a bit as well. You do lose detail, if that makes sense. So it does help to bring in a little bit more detail than of course you would have from a standard photo in low light, but it does give a little bit more of a softer look to those photos. And then the 8 megapixel selfie camera produces some, as you'd expect, photos from that resolution sensor. A decent amount of detail, but of course not the best. And then of course portrait mode does a pretty decent job at subject separation, as does it in portrait mode from the main camera. But here are a few more photos and a little bit of video sample from the Nokia G42. Let me know what you think. So that's my very quick look at the Nokia G42 in 2024 now, as we are in the new year. Of course, it's about 6 months old, but it's still readily available from Argos here in the UK. Of course, there are other options from the likes of Motorola, plenty of phones that I've covered. And then of course, there is always the option of older flagship devices that you can pick up for a very similar price to this Nokia G42. But of course, let me know down in the comments what you think of this phone, what you think of this video, and subscribe to the channel if you're interested in seeing more videos like this. I'm trying to hit 5,000 subscribers by February by the time I go away. So subscribe to the channel would be greatly appreciated. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video.